The biggest thing for me is that I just have a lot of pride and passion in our city, our state, and even more so locally in this community. I've spent my entire life here pretty much since 1992.
You're listening to Peachtree Corners Life, a podcast sharing ideas, opinions, and news about the city of Peachtree Corners, the community we live in, and the people that are your neighbors. Now, your host, Rico Figliolini.
Hi, everyone. This is Rico Figliolini, host of Peachtree Corners Life and publisher of Peachtree Corners Magazine, which I hope you're getting in the mail. We mail every single household in the city of Peachtree Corners, so certainly if you're not getting it, let me know. But this show is a special show that we're doing this evening, depending on when you're listening to this. We're recording it live, and the candidate that I'm speaking to is a candidate that's running for Congress for Georgia House seat number 7. He attended Duluth High School, UGA. He's a member of Peachtree Corners Baptist Church. He's lived here in Peachtree Corners for a while as well, hailing originally, I guess, from Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. But we'll introduce him. We'll talk to him tonight. Is about the issues, is about his passion for running, why he's choosing to run, and what issues are dear to him. So let's bring on Michael. How are you?
Doing good, Rico. I appreciate the time and being on here. And I do get the magazine and read it. I like it. It's usually very nice content and pertinent to Peachtree Corners. So really good publication.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Trying to keep everything relevant to the city of Peachtree Corners as much as we can. I don't think I'll ever run out of stories to tell about this city.
Yeah, we'll keep growing.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get right into it. You want to run for Congress, not state house, not mayor of the city, but for Congress. National platform. Tell us why you're choosing to do that. And you're going to be running, obviously, well, not obvious, but for those that don't know, in the Republican primary that happens next year. So we're early on in the process, but not for a candidate that wants to run for office. You're going to have to start now to be able to get that headwind going into May of next year for the primary. So tell us why you are choosing to run and tell us why you're passionate about it.
It was really kind of a personal calling that came upon me. And one of the things, and we'll get into this a little bit later, is something that I see is a disease in our political establishment. And that's what I would call a career politician. Everybody's always complaining. We never really get anything done. And the reason why is because of career politicians. And it leads to a lot of divisiveness. It leads to what people call the establishment on both sides. And it's a lot of just party bickering. And, I say you got to cut the cancer out and then treat it. Our forefathers never intended it to really be this way. It was for citizens to represent their constituencies, take a moment out of time of their private life to do so, and then go back. Unfortunately, there was nothing put into writing to limit that. And people now use that as really kind of a power grab. And it's becoming a problem where we can't get anything done and everything is really revolving around pride and not really pushing our country forward. I'm obviously a first-time candidate going into this and not starting at the small level, at the city council level or anything like that, kind of going at it. And whether win or lose, I always say, either win or you learn something in the process here. But I'm passionate about trying to make a change. It's not something I need to do in life, but I'm passionate about this community. I've lived here since 1992, did move here from Ohio and went to Duluth High School, went to University of Georgia. After that, moved back here. I've lived my entire professional career in the Atlanta metro market area and specifically within this district. I care a lot about the district. I've seen it grow. I've seen it change over the years in a lot of good ways. And I think that our leadership should represent that change. That's why I'm running. I really just want to see change and people that want to get into government to make change and then get out.
Do you find that politics is very different from what it was before? There was a bit more willingness to compromise on issues versus being the extreme on issues. And we find that in our media too, between CNN and Fox News, they're both too extreme. I could be looking at both of them, which I do on occasion, and I'll be looking at one and the other, and I'll be like, is today the right day? Why is one covering one thing and the other one covering something totally different maybe? So do you find it on both sides of the aisle? Do you find that issue that people are not doing what they should be doing on both sides of the aisle? We're a two-party system at this point, so there is the two sides. Do you find that in both parties?
Absolutely. I mean, I think when it comes to media, it's about ratings and getting that viewership and the money. When it comes to the different sides of the house, whether it's Democrat or Republican, they're both always constantly interviewing for their job. They're always trying to get as much money as they can for the next election. They're always trying to push their agenda because they can. And a lot of times those agendas are going to be completely polarizing from the other side of the house. You're always going to get that both ends of the spectrum. And it seems like that gap is getting wider and wider when you look at the people that represent America. But when we're living our daily life, I don't see that in the citizens of this country. I see that in the government. And I see the government and the media really fueling that polarization of our country. Just walking around talking to people living in the world, you see less of that polarization than you do actually in our government, who are supposed to be our leaders, and our media, who are supposed to be reporting accurate news. It's a little bit, I would say, disappointing, because those are the people that are supposed to be looking out for the best interests. And I almost think that the citizens actually have a better idea of how things should actually go.
Yeah, it's sad to see that the news, Fox News, CNN, those are the two major cable news now. People don't digest the news the way I do, maybe, or the way you do. I might have it on in the background even for like hours, versus people might see it for 10, 15 minutes. There's no such thing as what there used to be, anchor news. Now they're just talking heads, opinions, bringing on other people that might have opinions. So a variety of positions, and sometimes, like anything, facts can be construed into any which way you want to use it, right? Statistics are the same way. You can look at one stat versus another stat and what's more important and how you interpret it. Those are things that come across. Now, I know you want to change things. I know one of your biggest issues is term limits. I believe you want 3 terms for Congress and 2 terms for the Senate.
Yeah, and there's a group out there, www.termlimits.com. I've signed the pledge. There's been a lot of other current representatives in Senate and House, Ted Cruz, a lot of other people that have signed it, which is promising to really put guardrails around it. Right now, there are no term limits. It's almost, I wouldn't say impossible, but unless there's a vacant seat, someone says, I'm just done, nobody really runs, because the incumbent wins. I want to say 94% of the time. The statistics are pretty overwhelming when it comes to that. And it's just tough, right? It's tough to unseat people that are incumbents. They've got the name recognition. They've got the political backing, the financial backing, and they don't have to leave until they want to leave.
And they bring home the bacon, if you will. If they can take care of the constituents, whether the companies or organizations or nonprofits, if they can bring those grants and that money to the congressional district, who's going to argue that to a degree, right?
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of them along the way, I wouldn't say all representatives, whether it's Congress or Senate, they're cut from a certain cloth, and they get out of being a lawyer or doctor and they get into politics. And a lot of times it's to stay there as long as they can to make connections so they can improve their personal wealth. It's more pride and power over really virtue and doing the right things. That's why I just constantly see that nothing gets done, right? It's all about winning, like we're playing a football game. Hey, who's going to have the majority? And it's not really ever about like, well, what's going to be the best thing for our country? And I think it all stems back to the people that just don't want to get out of Congress. They don't want to get out of the Senate. I mean, look at Joe Biden, 40 plus years in government. So, that there's a problem when it gets to that point. It's time to step down. So, and Joe Biden, not to pick on him, there's lots of people that are like that.
No, for sure. And you have, even where you have term limits sometimes, I think it was Mayor Bloomberg was supposed to have in New York City, I think 3 terms was supposed to be his max, but he had the city council change the rules so this way he can run for another term, because I guess he felt he didn't have enough time to do what he wanted to do, his agenda. And he got a lot of things done, and maybe that was good. But at some point, if you had 3 terms in Congress, but you weren't able to accomplish everything you wanted, but you'd have to leave, would that be a good thing?
I think some of that you have to put the onus on yourself, right? How motivated were you to try to get the things accomplished for your constituency first and then your country? There's some people that just aren't that motivated. They just want to get in there to be able to solidify their name recognitions when they get out. They're making more money. So if you really want to get things done and you've got a shorter time span, you're going to be a lot more motivated to get it done. And the ones that aren't, they'll be weeded out pretty quickly. But yeah, if you don't get everything accomplished, anytime there's unfinished business, I think it pulls at your heartstrings. But sometimes your will is going to be trumped by God's will. And I believe that. And you just have to have patience and understanding. But yeah, I think anybody that serves that term and doesn't finish everything that they want, not to use a Mark Rick euphemism, but finish the drill. If you don't finish the drill, you may feel something or some way, but I still think it's better that way. I think people are going to be more motivated to get things done based on serving the people than serving themselves.
It's too bad that I don't see that passing anytime soon. And so it's not the same level playing field, unfortunately.
Yeah.
People will leave because they want to keep to that term limit, but then there'll be others there that will stay the 20, 30 years. And no doubt, like you said, once you're an incumbent, the odds are actually north of about 87% remain in incumbency because they not only control the process, if you will, to a degree, but because most people are not motivated to vote them out. You really have to have a really diehard reason to get those voters out, sometimes in certain districts, especially the way the lines are drawn sometimes, where a Republican will stay a Republican seat, a Democrat will stay a Democratic seat. This district, Georgia 7, is changing. The demographics have changed over the last decade, which is why I believe Carolyn Bordeaux was able to win, along with some other aspects to it. But the demographics are changing a bit. The politics are changing. Do you find that this might be an uphill battle to get there, or do you think you have that chance to be able to get that seat?
I would say it's definitely an uphill battle for Republicans. I mean, a lot of times, the ebbs and flows come with what's going on at large with the country. Some people might just be so upset because they're looking at, Atlanta, for instance, we lead all metro markets in the country in inflation rate about almost 8% right now. So there may be some people who are just so fed up. They're just like, Carolyn, I don't care. You're done. I need something new. But a lot of times people just go to the ballot and they're, Carolyn Bordeaux, I know that name, incumbent. They just check the box. So you have to be able to find some of those swing voters, which I think are getting more and more narrow. If you look at the district map since 1990, it has gone from red to just blue. But the demographics of our county have changed, and that's just the way it is. You have to be able to change with that. It was Rich McCormick who ran last time. I don't know if he's even going to try to run this time because it's not an open seat. It's one of those things where if you're not really appealing to some of those people that are independents, maybe swing votes, you're just going to lose. In this district, at least, you're going to lose.
For sure. I think moderate versus extreme is probably the best place to be. So let's talk a little bit more directly on the issues. You touched on inflation. So let's talk a little bit about that and what that means to residents of this district. Inflation is topping over 8%, and it's been steady. I think the last 5 months has shown a steady increase in inflation rate. Some people say that's the supply chain. Some people are saying that's the wage that's pressuring up prices and that it's short term. And then some companies are saying, no, this is the new norm. We're going to be seeing this. Not enough employment. The rate's going to be going higher. Inflation's going to be going higher. Where do you see that, and what do you see as a good way to counter that?
I think a lot of the damage has been done, unfortunately, and I think it's a perfect storm. You had COVID, and there was relief that needed to happen. There were people out of jobs. I do volunteer at a organization here in the Norcross area and saw firsthand how many people were in the food line and needed help. And I think that relief was really needed. But, over time, it's kind of weaned off a little bit. But I think as the political machine goes, that's how you buy votes, right? Let's continue pumping that money back into the economy artificially. And that was just passed. Again, there's a lot of that going on with new entitlement programs and the new Build Back Better plan, $1 trillion infrastructure plan that was passed. So I don't see a whole, I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. If right now we're at 8% here in Atlanta, workforce is still stagnant in terms of new jobs are out there, but people just aren't taking them. And it's in specific sectors, mostly the service industry. But, at a certain point, people have to work. If you're just pumping money into the economy and people are spending but not working, you're raising the wage when eventually people go back to work and they're making more money. and you've already pumped more money into into the economy, the cost of goods are just going to go up. That's just simple math. Personally, in my corporate life, I see it firsthand. And the lack of workforce when it comes to labor, raw material, there's major shortages, 20, 30% in some material that, at least in my industry, telecom, copper, fiber, all the electronic chips, we're looking at, from what I've been seeing from a lot of our large distributors, 2 years till we get back to where we were. That's just in my industry. On top of that, just, labor, the actual engineers and technicians that were maybe not high-end engineers that got furloughed are now not going back to work because they're making just as much money on assistance. A lot of that's gone away, so that may change. It's been kind of a perfect storm. It's been a tough year because a lot of businesses want to get back to business, but they can't get anything and they can't get a workforce going. So, it all kind of ties into inflation and just really making a tough, I would say, economy and workforce.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, people were furloughed or people were working remotely and they want to still work remotely. So maybe the company wants them to come back. Maybe they don't want to go back. I'm seeing more companies doing hybrid type jobs where it's, where you can, certain jobs you can, obviously restaurants and other areas, manufacturing, you can't do it that way, but service jobs, as far as like IT work and marketing and graphic design work and other things, can be done remotely. So I'm seeing companies doing 2 days in the office, 3 days out. I don't know if that's going to change anytime soon, but that might. That's affecting commercial buildings, rentals, and all that. People are still, you look in this area, it's almost 100% occupied, the apartment buildings. So those are doing well. People are paying their rent at this point, and unemployment subsidies has been gone for, 2 months now, 3 months?
Yeah, I think it was like end of August. So
it's been gone already. And if you look at the national statistics of what a typical household income or savings, where people are only month to month with their savings, I don't understand how they're paying the bills then without that subsidy or without taking a job. And there's plenty of jobs out there, it seems, certainly in certain sectors anyway. And even the high end, even in your sector, do you find that you're not able to fill the jobs within your company, within your sector of the business?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's become, really just a job market for anybody seeking a job. It's a playground, right? There's so many jobs out there. They call it the Great Resignation right now. They're just people just leaving jobs because they can to get a higher salary because people are desperate to hire. Now, it's not as dire as the service industry and people are still working. But yeah, with the amount of jobs posted versus how to get them filled is very difficult. There's demands. I want to work at home 100% full time, right? When you had never even been part of the industry. It's like, how do you get trained? So there are a lot of factors that go into it, but it's a tough time when it comes to that. I think eventually it's going to turn back around. I just don't know when that's going to happen. I think passing that spending bill is going to keep people waiting around to see, okay, what's next? What is going to be given out, which is just going to prolong this cycle. And unfortunately, when it ties back into inflation, when you're working, let's just look at 8% in the Atlanta market. How many people's income is going up 8%? It's not. You're having to cut back in some areas. You're not able to save if you've got kids for college. And that 8% year over year, if it keeps going up higher, you have to make sacrifices. And, for middle-class Americans, that may not be major sacrifices, but you're making sacrifices for your family in terms of being able to save for the future, do some of the things that you wanted to do. Hopefully there becomes a time where that does end, but the passing of that bill, I feel, may have thrown some fuel on the fire. We'll see.
Yeah, there was a lot of stuff in that bill. A lot of good stuff, I thought.
Yeah.
When it dealt with broadband, expansion of that, helping with the EV market, the electric vehicle market to a degree. There was a lot of good stuff in there. Obviously this type of bill, when you're talking $1 trillion, which no one can get really their head wrapped around understand what $1 trillion is, right? Never mind $1 million and how you spend that. So supply chain, jobs, inflation. What would you have done different in a bill like that? In $1 trillion bill, if you were able to put it together, what would you have done different there? What would you have taken out? What would you have added that may not be there?
Yeah, it's still, and I feel like it's kind of a mystery because it seems like there's a lot of Republicans, even Democrats, that don't know exactly what's in it. There's a lot of things that are earmarked. When it comes to things like rural broadband, I think that's something that needs to happen. Being in the telecommunications industry, it's very expensive. A lot of telecom companies get a lot of heat saying, why are you not building out fiber? Well, nobody really knows how much that costs to trench, dig, pull fiber past 10 houses over 50 miles. You're never going to get your return on investment. So why do you think they're not doing it? So the money's got to come from somewhere to help those companies build out that fiber and not just take a massive loss. Things like that are very important, roads, bridges. But I think when you start filling it with these other programs, and there's probably too many to name, but there was, just a lot of other government assistance type programs that are in there that are new that we don't know how long they're going to run, when they'll end, and what their purpose is in the long run. So I think those questions were there just weren't enough answers to those questions where I think anybody felt comfortable signing off on it. Obviously, it ended up passing. It got enough support, but
passing by, I think, 62 to something. I forget how many Republicans were on board with it as well.
Yeah, I want to think there was like 7, something like that in Congress that kind of flipped. It's something that I think it was just without knowing all the details of it and reading it thoroughly, which, would probably put you to sleep. You don't really know the long-term effects of some of the stuff that's hidden in there. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but there's a lot of stuff that's hidden in there that we'll see what those effects have. The timing is just bad when you've got that kind of spending and the debt that we have and the inflation issues that we have. Spending that kind of money is at this time not a good time. We're not in a depression. Biden tried to sell it as like the New Deal, and it's not, right? We were coming out of a depression. We're in a depression when FDR passed that, and we're not in a depression right now. We have inflation and we have enough people to work and we have enough jobs, but people aren't working. So the need to spend that amount of money was, in my mind, unnecessary. There was a need to spend money, but probably not that much.
And certainly they wanted more than what they got by far.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
And like you said, in a bill like this, there's always amendments. There's always things put in that certain congressmen want, certain senators want. So it gets to be a bit of a pork barrel of stuff too. So I wouldn't be surprised there are things in there that probably we would never know about. Let's get on to immigration. There's been a crisis at the border. There's been a crisis at the border since Trump and even before Trump. Has it gotten worse? Has it gotten better? I mean, ebb and flows. Sometimes I think that Biden's immigration problem is roughly no different than what Trump had at the border also. But should we be spending time to create a comprehensive immigration bill? Should people be waiting 5 years before they are allowed to come into this country? Should people be paying certain visas because they can put $100,000 into a new business to be able to come to this country? Is it broken? How do we fix that?
Yeah, it's definitely broken. I think the optics just depend on who's president, right? You had kids in cages when Trump was president. You had kids in cages when Biden was president. It's no better now. It's no worse. It's just how the media spins it. For me, I just think that, there needs to be an easier path. Our country was built upon immigrants. I'm here from descendants from Europe and wouldn't be here if immigration wasn't. None of us would be, right? Unless you're 100% Native American. So there needs to be a way. People come here to find a better life for the most part. There are a minority of people that come here for the wrong reasons. And I think there can be task forces, which already exist, to make sure you crack down on that, narcotics, human trafficking. I think if you have more money pumped into those programs to make sure that we're really kind of honing in on, okay, who's coming across the border to really make a life for themselves and their family versus those that are just really trying to do the wrong things, and putting efforts around that, then we'll see progress. But nobody wants to work together on that. It's all about your plan is bad, my plan's good, vote for me, vote for him. So immigration is an important topic for me. And a lot of that just comes back to my religious beliefs. And, Christ said you should welcome widows, orphans, and foreigners and treat them with that kind of respect. And to see how we treat people that come into this country is disheartening. It's emotional at times to see kids trying to get over here, families broken apart. So there's just got to be a better way to do it. I think there can be, but it's always about who's right, who's wrong, and how do I make the situation look worse for that guy so I can get voted in House, rather than actually worrying about and being an advocate for the people that are trying to come here to make a better life for themselves.
Do you think Daca should be made permanent? The whole idea of Daca is to accept the immigrants that are here, which, depending on who you talk to, could be 10 million, 11 million, 15 million that are illegal, to come here illegally, but have made permanent homes here. Kids have gone to college here. They may have been here for 10, 15 years. They may have been here since they were two. All of a sudden, one administration wants to deport a 2-year-old that was here that's 18 years old now to a country they know nothing about. Do you think that we should create a path for citizenship, at least for the children of those that came here illegally? Do you have any idea of what you'd like to see in that?
I would like to see that. And, I would challenge people that are Republicans to actually get out and get exposed to people that have come here illegally and understand what they're going through, right? And try to put yourself in their shoes. Until I really started doing that, I didn't really understand. But you really see what they go through, the conditions they live in, and how much pride they take in just being in this country. And I think if you actually gave them status as an American citizen, they would be red, white, and blue all over for the rest of their lives. The vast majority of them. There are some people that come here legally to do the wrong things, but I think that you can't paint with broad strokes. I think most people come here to make a life for themselves, just like people did at the beginning of our country throughout the early 1900s. I mean, there's always been waves of immigration. And when people get over here, they pound their chest red, white, and blue. And I think that's what does need to happen. And then moving forward, there needs to be a better way to allow people in a responsible and humane way. So they're not clamoring and rushing to the border, but they know that, hey, if you get here, there's going to be a path and it's not going to be ridiculous. You're not going to have to smuggle yourself in.
So would you think that, we're at the point where we're an aging society, it's an aging economy, we're not expanding as much as we were. The white birth rate is lower than it used to be by far. It's actually below the level that would be expanding the population. The expanding populations right now are Asian populations, Latino community. Within about 20, 30 years or less, maybe, will be a majority minority country. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there is. There's nothing wrong with that. Blended families, there's just nothing wrong with that. But we need to maybe make the immigration process shortened. There's no reason why someone needs to wait 5 years, 4 years, even 3 or 2 years before they get an answer whether they come into this country or not. Should we be putting more money towards that budget? Because right now, there's not enough people to even, you could wait 10 years before you get accepted into this country.
That's the only way to, I would say, prevent what's happening now, where you start to have these mad rushes because people will say, all right, well, this is my time, let's get in. And you start to see smuggling of people and babies coming unaccompanied. And that's a problem. It's systemic because we don't have a good way of getting people that want to be here legally in. And yeah, it's lack of funding, lack of oversight, and there needs to be work done there. Hopefully it gets that way. My wife's a teacher. She's got a heavy Hispanic population, and the parents that she talks about there are just so invested in their kids and wanting them to have a better life, and so invested in what they're doing and how they're performing. And they want to be here. They want to do the right things. The vast majority of them, they just need the support. I take a little different view probably than a lot of Republicans do when it comes to that, just because of some of the things I've been exposed to, just volunteering and being alongside of some of these people that I know are illegal, but are providing assistance to, because it's, to me, the right and the Christian thing to do is to help them out. They're human beings. So yeah, there's got to be a better way. I don't know what that way is, but it's going to be money and it's going to be building or fortifying organizations that already exist to make sure that there's a path and it's not chaos at the border.
What do you think about COVID's going on 2 years now almost? When it first started in the month of February or March, when it got really bad and things shut down in lots of parts of the country, it almost felt like, not The Walking Dead, but it almost felt like apocalyptic in the way it was going. Like things had to be shut down because the contagion was spreading. And you think about these movies, Outbreak and stuff like that. But we've come out of it. Things have changed. Lots of things have changed. The way we work, the way we eat, how we order our food, how we talk to our employers, how we work remotely. But now we have vaccines. We have boosters. Hopefully COVID doesn't come back again. Hopefully there's not another resurgence of it. But what
Yeah.
do you see moving forward that we should be doing? Looking back in the past, we can't change anything. But moving forward, what should we be doing?
When it comes to vaccines, I mean, I vaccinated. It's just one of those things. I was a little bit hesitant at first. I think there were a lot of people, but chose to get vaccinated. The science is showing that obviously, even if you get it, you're going to be a lot less likely to have to get serious medical attention. It's a good thing that the vaccine's out here. It's letting us get back to normal lives. When it first hit us, yeah, it was very weird. I mean, I remember I do a lot of running around here and just running in around the forum, and there's just nobody there. It was like a ghost town. It was creepy. And nobody knew what was going on and where it came from or how it happened. I think we learned a lot from it in terms of we were not really that well prepared for a pandemic. And I think it was well documented that there's been, even the Obama administration, I think when it was SARS that was going around, and they said they dodged a bullet, that there was no outbreak in the US because there was nothing, right? It would have been almost the same. So I think moving forward, there's got to be a better plan. You can't plan for every virus that's out there, but you've got to have a better plan with the infrastructure. Like, we didn't have enough ventilators. We didn't have a lot of the right advice at the beginning. Wear a mask, don't wear a mask. There was just a lot of chaos and misinformation. I think, if it happens again, maybe we'll have a better plan, but I think there should be some type of group that's going to be, okay, here's what happens if this type of virus gets out, or this type of virus. It may not be a certain strand or whatever it is, but how do we prepare? What type of infrastructure is going to be needed? And how do we scale it? Because we didn't know how to do that.
Testing, we didn't have the facilities even.
Yeah, we couldn't test. We didn't have ventilators. We didn't have facilities. So nobody thought about that, or just nobody put enough thought into it to actually put a plan in place. So, we got to think about that, because it could happen again. And another thing, I still want to know what happened. A lot of people do. I still think China needs to be held accountable. I don't think the U.S. as a global society, the world has really pressed on them hard enough. I don't know if it was intentional. I don't know if it was accidental. But if it was intentional, who's to say it's not going to happen again?
But how would you hold them accountable? Whenever I hear that, like the draw that line in the sand thing that Obama did, and then someone steps over and they look at you and you don't do anything. If there are consequences, what would those consequences be? And then where would that stop?
The consequences in my mind, just from an abstract view, is number one, you have to start pulling away resources and money, which is what they care about the most. And it has to be done from a coalition perspective. If the United States goes at it alone, they're just going to be whatever. So you're going to have to get other countries on board and really press them and stop trade, stop a lot of things, pull companies out of China.
How do you do that? Talk about supply chain issues. I didn't know this until COVID happened, that 80% of the active ingredients in most of our pharmaceuticals come from China.
Yep.
That almost the entire supply of masks, 90% or something, of those N95s, everyone else is wearing cloth, so am I. They're not going to work on most viruses like that. N95s is what you have to have. Almost all of them come from the Asian Pacific. All that we buy, our iPhones, our iPads, our foods, even some of it comes from Asia. How could we do that? It would just go bad.
It would. We have the ability. Are we willing to pay more for what we're getting today for less? That's the whole reason why a lot of companies moved over there. A lot of productions moved over there. Even my 4 and 7-year-old daughter know that everything's made in China. So you can't do it overnight. I think you have to apply pressure over time. And while you're applying that pressure over time, starting to build a contingency plan. If you don't, the world is always going to be at the mercy of China. And let's say this was something nefarious that they did, and they just said, hey, let's test this out and see what they can actually even do. Well, if that's what they're...
Do you think really that would be the case? I mean, something like that, it's like Israel's, what was it, the Sputnik virus that got into Iran's system that went wild and went across other countries besides Iran. A virus is worse, right? Because you can't just direct where it's going to go. It's going to go where it wants to go.
I don't think anybody can say with certainty that it was planned or not planned, but there's no transparency in what actually happened. And they could have. I mean, they could have. And China's such a closed off society and very secret, to the point of you say the wrong thing, you sometimes don't get heard from again. Nobody really knows. It could have been an honest mistake. A bat bit somebody, or somebody ate some.
Or it could have came out of a lab accidentally. I'm not saying it didn't come from a lab, but accidentally, I wouldn't be surprised that things happen.
I definitely don't believe it came from an animal, because expert immunologists have said there's no way a virus could become that lethal that quickly in nature from animal to human transmission. So I think it was produced. Was it leaked accidentally or on purpose? I think that's the question. If it was on purpose, then wow, China's definitely a pretty evil society. If they said, okay, we're going to pick this one city and let those citizens probably suffer, let some people fly out of there and spread it amongst the world and see what happens. That's the far-fetched theory. The probably more problematic or more likely scenario is it leaked out somehow. Somebody left that lab and got infected by it, and China just doesn't want to admit that it happened. And
I think I agree. That's likely the scenario. I mean, I've seen CDC reports where sometimes they've lost virus vials that they've been working on. They can't track down anymore. So it's just, how do you do that then? How does that walk out of what is level 4 lab or something?
But the most likely scenario out of all those is, in a lab, accidentally got out, and nobody just wants to take accountability for it.
Let's do some quick questions. Sure. COVID-19 vaccine mandates. For it, against it, private companies, government, your opinion?
Personally, if I'm working for a company that is mandating it, then just go ahead and do it. I think it's become such a political issue now. You have to get vaccinated to go to school. In the military, you got to get something like 17 vaccines. To go overseas, you got to get vaccines. So I think a lot of people just are like, I'm not going to do it because it's my right. And I respect their right. But I also respect the right of companies to say, hey, we don't want to have to deal with this long term, so get vaccinated or you can't be here.
Do you think that schools should do the same thing? I mean, right now, my kids have to have, your kids likely when they enter school have to have certain vaccines done. Do you believe schools should mandate vaccines for this?
I would say if COVID is still here, let's say in the next year, 2 years, not a bad idea. If it starts to wean off, then probably not. To me, that's more like the flu shot. Like we just have to live with the flu. The flu is going to be around. It used to be very deadly. Now it's not. But my hope is that COVID, it's going to be part of our lives, but it won't be as effective as it has been. So I would say let's wait that out a little bit, not rush to judgment, just because kids' bodies are growing. They respond in different ways. And the studies have shown when kids get it, it's not very bad. There's not that many deaths like it is in older people or people that are, immunocompromised. So I personally, my opinion would be, let's give it a little bit more time. Adults, I personally have had family members that decided not to get vaccinated and then got COVID afterwards and went to the hospital. And it's kind of like, why, right? Everybody was crying for a vaccine like a year ago. Where's this vaccine? Where's this vaccine? Then it comes out and then they're like, I don't know about that.
Yeah. It's amazing how humans can be.
I say all that to say this. If somebody says, hey, I don't want to take it, that's their choice. Everybody's got free will in their life. So I'm not going to bash people for not taking it. But I also do believe that, hey, if it's out there and it's proven to be helpful, then it's not a bad idea to get it.
Cool. We spent more time than we were going to, but there was a lot of good topics to talk about. So I appreciate you hanging in there with me like that.
Yeah, sure.
Let me just do some quick, easy stuff. What's your favorite food?
Favorite food? Definitely pizza.
Okay. You like to run, it sounds like. Do you listen to music while you're running or podcasts?
I listen to typically music, yeah.
Okay. Any particular type of music? Or
believe it or not, yeah, I grew up listening to kind of like the Southern rap sort of scene, so like Outkast and stuff like that. Yeah, so I'm usually listening to that because it's getting me pumped up. I can't listen to anything real slow and easy.
Do you have any app games or board games that you like best?
I play Jeopardy on my phone all the time. Yeah. And I play Kids Monopoly with my daughters. So, yeah, those are the two things.
Neat.
I don't play video games anymore. I used to love that high school, college, but yeah. Don't.
Which ones did you play? What was your favorite?
Mostly sports games like NCAA 2001 or 1999 or whatever it was back then. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. I moved here in 95, but before that, when my wife and I got married, not a sports person. So we were playing Zelda, Mario Brothers, all sorts of games like that.
Oh, I love Zelda and Mario Brothers too. Yeah. Okay. I was a big Nintendo guy, not Sega.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. That's between that and espressos. We were up 8 hours playing before kids.
Yeah. Now, have you always lived in Peachtree Corners?
Moved down from Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
We've always lived in Peachtree Corners. We moved straight here in 95 and haven't moved anywhere else since then. So
that's fantastic. Yeah.
Kids grew up here. Kids went through the public school system, through the IB system. They all cried as they were going through the IB system, but the two older ones loved it after that because college was easy. They were the only ones that knew how to write, it seemed, in their study groups, and so they would have to take over. But the IB program in this school system here was phenomenal for them.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I wish we could have talked about education, but we are at 50 minutes and we're at the end of our time together. So what I'd like to ask you to do, and what I ask most candidates to do, is give us that 1 minute, what you would do at the door when you knock. Why should people be voting for you, and where they can find out more information about you? So ask for the vote, if you will.
Yeah, in some of my email campaigns, I'm not shy about that. I've been in sales my entire life, and I'm going to ask for the business, right? So I ask for your vote. The biggest thing for me is that I just have a lot of pride and passion in our city, our state, and even more so locally in this community. I've spent my entire life here pretty much since 1992. I was 14 years old, and I don't plan on going anywhere. Not cut from the cloth of the rich or elite. My purpose to get into politics is to just make change. And as Rico was talking about, if I can't get it all done in the term limit that I'm there, I will try my hardest. And that's the biggest thing. I've got nothing to lose. I'm doing this because I really, truly care about our country, truly care about this district, and want to make change. I don't want to just say things and have it be hollow, empty promises. And I think a lot of people are just starting to see that, and you can kind of see it on their faces. You go to the polls and you have two choices, and both of those choices don't look like you. They don't talk like you. They don't act like you, and they're not going to support you. Well, I will. You can find more information on me at www.corbin4, that's the number 4, congress.com. So that's www.corbin4congress.com. So a lot of information on there, as well as at Corbin for Congress on my Twitter handle as well.
Great. So we've been talking to Michael Corbin, Congressional Candidate, U.S. House, Georgia, District 7, running as a Republican in the Republican primary. They'll be coming up in May of 2022 next year. Sounds like it's far away, but it's not. It'll be here soon. More issues will probably develop before then that we are not even thinking about yet. So you never know what God brings to you. Doors closed, doors open. So be safe out there. I appreciate, Michael, you hanging in there with me and being on this podcast. Thank you. Everyone else, visit livinginpeachtreecorners.com and find out a little bit more about what's going on in your community. If you have any questions for Michael, post them in the comments below. Even though this is a live simulcast stream, we'll be able to answer back some of these questions later. So thank you for being with us. And if you listen to this on an audio podcast, please rate us and share it with your friends. Let them know where you're hearing news about Peachtree Corners and the things that go on in the city. Thank you all.
Thank you, Rico, for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Peachtree Corners Life with Rico Figliolini. You can listen to the show wherever podcasts are found, like iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. Leave us a review too. It helps others find the show as well. Don't forget to like our Facebook page and YouTube channel for notifications of our live simulcast video streams of the show. Catch our other podcast shows at livinginpeachtreecorners.com. In fact, you can listen to our other popular show, The Capitalist Sage, a twice-a-month podcast about and for businesses. The show brings you interviews with business owners, leaders, and subject matter experts. Find what you need to meet today's challenges that every business owner faces. Check out the show at thecapitalistsage.com.